NHL Draft is just over a week away, and we are going to give our top 10s. We're going to talk about what the Sharks will do in the late first round and early second round, possibly, and just a bunch more about prospects and stuff. It is Teal Town Live. Where's my video? But of course, if you want to be part of the show, hit us up on all the social media platforms. Hit us up in the comments. I'm looking forward to actually the comment section and the chat for today's show because I think it's going to be fun as we give our lists and everything and do all that fun stuff. If you are new here, subscribe, hit the like button, leave us a comment, all the YouTube stuff that we love what you do. And let's get this thing started. It is me. I am the Angry Canadian Robot, Ian. It is Jules. It is Mark. We are going to do our draft preview. I played the wrong video to start the thing. This is not After Dark, but you know what? That's the coolest intro we have. So I'm going with it, man. It is the coolest intro we've got. Guys, how you doing?
I'm great. It's the best time of the year.
It Same is here. Kind of the best time of the year, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the time where I come out of my hole and people start seeing my face.
Yeah, it's when Mark comes out of hiding and then.
Yep. I think before we break that, I'll put up our top 10 lists in a second, and then we'll kind of have a discussion on those lists. I get overall, like, what is your feeling on this year's draft? And maybe just to start in comparison to like maybe some previous drafts or whatever. How are you guys feeling about this year's draft overall? Before we get started, who wants to go first?
Jules, take it.
Okay. Yeah, I think there is actually for this year's draft, I feel like it suits the Sharks well. And I'll get into this. There is a niche of just shutdown defensemen who are very large and who are right-handed or left-handed, either handedness. I don't really care. There's just that niche, and I think it'll be available to them at around picks 30, 33, and 53. So I really like that. Like when I was looking through all those like scouting stuff, like there is a niche of defensemen that I think the Sharks could get really lucky to get them at a 30, at a 33. But I think that there's two top end talents, and then there's not that big of a drop off, in my opinion. Like, I think this draft has gotten some hate in a way that it's not as like there's no Macklin Celebrini in this draft, but there are some pretty darn good players in this draft. So that's like just my overall thoughts. There's good defensemen. I like them.
Yeah. I'll jump in and I'm going to provide some of that hate. I actually think this draft is pretty bad. But that being said, I think it actually, like you said, does suit the Sharks. I think we are in the perfect position at the top of the draft to get one of the higher end players. And I do think based on what our team need is, we have the ability with the players like you were mentioning, get a lot of those guys who could fit into maybe a middle pairing in the future on the defensive end. And that's really what we need. But I will say it's one of those drafts where I think there are some very big drop-offs after the players we're going to cover today. Yeah. And I don't think you're getting, say, a Quinton Musty in the 20s or a Chernyshov at like 33. Some of those guys I think could even have been like maybe even around top 10 in this draft. So I think that speaks to the lack of depth with it. But I do think the Sharks are in a good place for this draft.
To me, it's the draft of the two-way center.
That's
that's the thing, like where like when you look at, especially where like a lot of these guys we're going to talk about in the first round, especially in the top, like it's the two-way center draft. I think that's the thing that stands out to me the most. I agree. I don't think this is as good a draft as we've seen previously. I don't think the tippy top is as good as last year when you're talking about guys like Macklin Celebrini, obviously. But I don't know. I think it is the two-way center draft. Like if you're looking for a two-way center, you're going to find one this draft, especially if you're drafting in the top 10. So let's get this started here. What was the message?
I will say it's also the draft of playmakers. There are a ton of good playmakers out there in this draft. A ton. The list goes on and on.
Yeah, all right. So I guess we can get into some of our lists here. Whose list do you want me to throw up first? Does anyone care?
No.
Nope.
All right, Mark, I'm going to throw yours up first.
Yes, let's go.
All right. So this is Mark's top 10. Mark has Matthew Schaefer at 1, Michael Misa at 2, Porter Martone at 3, Caleb Desnoyers at 4, James Hagens at 5, Anton Frendel at 6, Jake O'Brien at 7, Roger McQueen at 8, Ratty Murtka at 9, and Kishwan Atkinson at 10. Just for those people who are possibly listening to this on the audio stream and don't have the visual in front of them, I thought I'd read through it. I'm going to bring up Jules' list next. Jules' top 10 has Matthew Schaefer at 1, Michael Misa at 2, Porter Martone at 3, Caleb Desnoyers at 4, Anton Frendel at 5, James Hagens at 6, Roger McQueen at 7, Jackson Smith at 8, Jake O'Brien at 9, and Carter Bear at 10. And then I will throw up my list last. I have Matthew Schaefer at 1, Michael Misa at 2, Caleb Desnoyers at 3, Porter Martone at 4, James Hagens at 5, Anton Frendel at 6, Roger McQueen at 7, Ratty Murtka at 8, Victor Eklund at 9, and Jake O'Brien at 10. All right, so let's I kind of want to get into these lists a little bit here. Oh, I forgot to put that away. All right, so I just want to make sure I'm kind of got an eye on the chat here. Let me just scroll this down to make sure we're set. Ian is the true hero as always. There we go. So a couple of things here. We not on the graphic, but we kind of made like a tier of different players, right? So in my list, actually in all of our lists, we have Michael Misa and Matthew Schaefer in the top tier, all on their own. Me and Jules, even though we have players in different orders, have Desnoyers, Porter Martone, James Hagens, and Anton Frendel in the next group. Mark has Porter Martone in a tier by himself, and then Caleb Desnoyers, Hagens, and Frendel in a third tier, and then Jules has the other people on the list. So you're Roger McQueen's, Murtka O'Brien. You have Carter Bear in a fourth tier, and you have and Mark has Jake O'Brien, Roger McQueen, Ratty Murtka, and Kishwan Atkinson in a fourth tiers. So let's actually, before we get into the tiers, let's just talk about the top first. Obviously, we have the first tier. We all agree on it. Obviously, Matthew Schaefer. Like, what, in your guys' opinion, makes Matthew Schaefer the number one overall pick? Pretty consensus, especially given the fact that he didn't play a lot of games this year. For those who don't know, he was hurt in the World Junior Championship after playing, just a few games, a handful of games, more than a handful of games. But he had, he started the season with the Erie Otters, obviously, goes to the World Junior, gets injured, season-ending injury. Yet, here he is, top of the list. What, in your guys' opinion, makes him the going away number one? Mark, I'll start with you.
I think it is the modern day obsession with offensive defensemen who can also, play everywhere. And I think he shows signs of that. I mean, people want to replicate a Makar, a Quinn Hughes, those kind of players. And Schaefer is probably the best defenseman we've seen in the draft since maybe Dahlin coming into this. So I think any team is dying to get that on their team.
Jules?
Yeah. No, he's like, you watch this kid, his skating is beyond notch. Like, it's a whole other level. And he was before he got injured, he was one of Canada's best defensemen at World Juniors, the way he's able to take over. And like, it's not that he's not even bad defensively. Like, yeah, there's stuff he needs to work on defensively, but he already has such poise with the puck. He's, in my opinion, I think he's one of the youngest in the draft. He's like 10 days away from the 26th draft. You look at the package he provides, like, yeah, even though he's only played 17 games, like in those 17 games he was most of the time the best player on the ice, takes over shifts. He doesn't necessarily have that like hard clapper that most defensemen have, but he'll beat you in other ways, and his skating will sell most teams by itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, there's nothing he does everything well, like at varying levels of good to great. I think that's the thing that stands out the most to me. I think Rasmus Dahlin, you mentioned Rasmus Dahlin, he reminds me a lot of Rasmus Dahlin. I think stylistically, I find them to be very similar guys. So I think, again, and decent size, does everything great. I think that's
for sure.
the thing that stands out with him is like is just his all around game is just really good. And I'm hoping that obviously it's hard because you do get worried about obviously missing that much time in a development year. But I think he's going to be fantastic. And if the Islanders don't take him, they're dumb.
If
Agreed.
that happens, because I could make an argument that Misa could go first, right? Like I think we could all make that argument for Misa, and we'll get there. But if the Islanders, let's say, are dumb and don't take Schaefer, like you add Schaefer with a Sam Dickinson, I know left, right, whatever, we'll figure it out. But like that's arguably a top 10 D pairing in the future. So the Sharks would be laughing their asses off if that happens.
Okay, so let's move on to Michael Misa. Michael Misa, 6'1", 184-pound center. Obviously, I'll start. I mean, he's a dynamic play driving shoot first center. He has all the tools. Like in my opinion, he has all the tools to be very successful in the NHL. I think his forecheck is great, and and here's the thing: like a lot of people, I think, are going to be like, "Oh, but he wasn't even on the World Junior team," and that to me is an absolute travesty that he was not on that team. Not even invited to camp, which I think is a travesty. And I know that's probably going to come up. People like, oh, he wasn't even, good enough to be at the World Juniors. He should have been there. I think the results bear that out too. So I don't think, I think like when you look at sometimes how Team Canada kind of builds its team, and I said that's at the time, Mark, I don't know if you'll agree with me, like they built that team to be in a 7-game series instead of a single elimination tournament.
Yeah, no, I agree. There was a lot of issues with that team. I mean, even in terms of usage early on, but Misa not being there, I mean, Martone barely got really much time with them as well. You often see those top 5 eligible guys make an impact and be given those chances, but they didn't really give it there at Canada at the time, and they didn't really do well. So, I mean, it kind of speaks to itself in terms of their management. But Misa, I think, there is a strong argument for him being possibly the best player in this draft because he has a pretty high floor, I think.
Yeah.
I think at a minimum, you're looking at a 2C, right?
Mm-hmm.
This guy has a lot of upside as well. And, defensemen are harder to project. They develop a little bit slower. So there are arguments. I think if you're a team like the Islanders, for example, who aren't quite rebuilding, there is a population of people there. I mean, they want their Hagans, obviously, but like, would make the argument where it might even be better to pick a guy like Misa because he could probably jump in a year and provide value. Whereas Schaefer, as good as he looks and as good as he is, he needs another year or two at least probably before being NHL ready. I mean, you don't just play 17, 18 games and jump to the NHL in his position as one of the youngest guys. Like he won't be 18 until camp. So I like Misa. I like his all-around game. I like his offense. And I think he could be the perfect number 2C for the Sharks.
And I think the other thing with Misa too is that from when I've watched him too, like he's a guy who, again, like it gives you versatility because I think he would thrive just as well on the wing than at center because you look at the Sharks, right? And obviously Will Smith is a center too, but I think having that kind of versatility to kind of be able to move guys around and kind of play guys in different positions, I think it's great. I mean, you look at the defense of the San Jose Sharks, obviously, and especially the defensive prospect pool, and obviously it's lacking. Like it does definitely leave something to be desired. But after it was kind of like sort of solidified that it was okay, it's 2. Like I am ecstatic to get Michael Misa.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was like 3 goals shy of basically being a goal per game in the OHL. Like,
yeah.
Also, something to note: he has played with Igor Chernyshov, who is in our. And the Sharks have a chance to draft the other line mate they were playing with on that junior line that basically carried Saginaw for most of the year, or like at least when Chernyshov came into the lineup. You know what I mean? No, Misa is not a bad consolation prize. Like when we got numbered, the hope was during the draft lottery, as we said, is to get 1 or 2, and both of these players address a need that the Sharks have. Schaefer being just we need defense, and Misa gives us the ability to keep Celebrini and Smith together. Because I think he's going to be probably one of not the best 2Cs in the league come, 5, 7, 6 years from now when the Sharks are back in the playoffs and competitive. If your 2C is Michael Misa, you're not complaining. Like he's going to be a great fit, assuming the Sharks draft him to our prospect pool.
Is there anything that you guys would like as far as like maybe flaws in Misa's game that you could think of off the top of your head, Mark? I'll start with you.
Only thing I have heard, which I will not say I experienced myself, is 2 years in a row he didn't do great in the playoffs. Now this
Mhm.
year in the playoffs he was injured. He did pick up an injury to the point where I think he didn't play the last game or two.
Yeah.
But that always kind of raises a little bit of a flag for me, just because I really want guys who get better in the playoffs. But again, it's the juniors. I'm not going to read too much into that, and I really think everything else he does is quite well. Skating, shooting, passing, vision, hockey IQ. He's got it all. So I'm not going to get too worried about what his junior playoff stats are.
I think the only thing that I think my concern is, like, I really like his two-way games, but I think sometimes he does cheat for offense, and he does kind of like, I think he cheats a little bit in the, like, sometimes in the defensive zone, but when he's trying to be like defensive, I think he does it really, really well. It's just, I think it's the tendency to sometimes cheat for offense, and I think that's coaching, right? Like, you can fix that with coaching in the NHL. I think it's something that it's a lot more. It's not going to get you, like, it works in junior hockey, but it's not going to work in the AHL or the NHL or any of the pro ranks. Who does P remind you? Like, do you have a comparable for Michael Misa?
I've heard some comparisons with Hischier in terms of maybe upside being like one of the higher end 2Cs, but I really think he's more than that. Early on in the season, I actually felt like he was a poor man Celebrini because of the way he drives offense, the way he can create plays, carry the puck into the zone, and then can also like find people or find his own space. So those are just some recent comparisons I'd make, but I really feel like he's a little bit of a player in his own. I don't have like a direct comparison.
No, I mean, comparables are kind of like a fool's thing. He kind of, who he reminds me of in my viewings of him? He kind of reminds me a little bit of Braden Point. Okay. I don't think he's going to be Braden Point, right? Like, this is why comparables are a dumb game, because like people are like, oh, that guy's good, like, it's, you want to look stylistically so you can kind of like give someone who hasn't seen him something to compare it to. But I'm not saying he's going to be Braden Point, obviously, but I do see some Braden Point in his game.
This is one of them is slightly off the curve. John Tavares, which has been bounced around a ton with his game, but a more offensive Anthony Cirelli. I definitely see, just like John Tavares is a bit like, there are some, I think, comparisons there, but I think he's a more offensive Anthony Cirelli, and his two-way game's already really pretty darn good for a, and I think he'll only get better. So yeah, I'd say he's a more offensive Anthony Cirelli.
Okay, so Mark, you had Porter Martone at number 3. You have him in a tier of his own. What separates Porter Martone from Desnoyers, Hagens, and Frundell?
I think it's the upside, and that's where I think Martone, if he hits, could actually really end up being the best player in this draft. But I just don't see him probably doing that when you have guys like Misa and Schaefer and the talent they have. But Martone is he's a very good winger. And, the position sometimes brings the player down, right? You're dealing with a center and a defenseman. So I'm going to obviously rate them a little bit higher. But I think Martone has the ability to do it all. And he has the makings of a power forward. I think his physical side is a bit overrated at times. I don't really think he actually is a power forward yet, but he's got the frame for it. And stylistically, he can get there. And I could see him being that more in the NHL level. But his shot, his skills are elite for his age. And I think at the NHL level, I wouldn't be surprised if coming out of this draft, he's the guy who put up the best stats in the future.
Porter Martone, to me, has the potential to be one of those rare wingers that actually can make their center better, which is why I really like Porter Martone. And obviously the size, right? The size, the heaviness to his game. I think, especially in a class that has a lot, I think a lot of guys who are kind of physically able to kind of push play with their size and be physical. I think he excels at that above the whole group. I really like Porter Martone. I do have, the only concern I have with Porter Martone is his skating.
Yep.
Yeah, skating and consistency.
Yep.
Skating and consistency. He can, when he's on his game, he is on his game. But when he's off his game, it is a oof maron. Like when he's on, he's on, when he's off, he's off. So if he can develop that consistency and that like high end skating ability, I think he'll hit. That's why I don't think the Sharks are leaning towards him at 2, because I know there's always those rumors. I just think Greer definitely drafts skating, prioritizes skating based off of his recent draft picks.
Yeah, because I think really like that's my only real concern with Porter Martone. Like thanks for asking in the chat. Let's answer the question: how many gray hairs does Ian sprout if Greer picks Porter Martone at 2? I would be disappointed because I think Misa's the better player, and I think he is in that. Like I just think him and Schaefer are kind of a cut above the rest of the group. So I'd be disappointed from that respect, but there's a lot of in Porter Martone's game that I really, really like as well. And again, like I think, again, he has the potential. And again, it's all these guys, it's potential. They're not 100% sure things, obviously, but if he can be a guy who comes in, who I think has all the tools of a smaller, like you look at like a lot of these smaller, more dynamic players, and I think he has that tool set in a bigger body.
Mm-hmm.
If he can get the skating to match, like, I mean, I would be disappointed, but I would get over it really quick if Porter Martone was the pick at 2.
Yeah, I think that knock on him is pretty consistent, and like his skating, it's not Chichu level bad, but it's just not up at that level of like a number 2 and number 3 overall pick. So it needs improvement. I think he was probably the last player, and it's also kind of why I put him in a tier of his own, that I would not be terribly upset if Greer, kind of like what you were saying, I wouldn't be terribly upset. I want to go with Misa there at 2, but I wouldn't be upset. Whereas I think any other player on this list, if Greer took him at 2, I'd be pretty upset.
Yeah.
Martone has the argument to be the best playmaker in this draft. Like the way he can dangle through a phone booth. So like, would I be upset if they take him at 2? No, but I'm also like, if you get Martone, you're still filling in a need for the Sharks, right? Like if you look at their right wing prospect strength, it's not that strong on their right wing. Like of course if Smith moves over, sure, but like I wouldn't be upset. Of course you want Misa, but Martone isn't a bad, I guess, number 3 option.
So I guess I'll try and defend my saying all that. Why do I have Caleb Desnoyers at 3? I kind of like when I did this list, I kind of took a look at like who is drafting in these positions as well. Now Porter Martone would be really nice on Connor Bedard's wing, obviously. But I think if you have concerns about some of your players in Chicago's system, like I really love Frank Nazar. I don't know if he's a center in the NHL. And I think Caleb Desnoyers is. And this could be some recency bias too, obviously. He was one of all these guys, he was the last one playing in the Memorial Cup. And so there's probably some recency bias here. I think that Caleb Desnoyers is he's 100% going to be a center in the NHL. I think he's really smart. I think he's really toolsy. I just think that when you look at, again, like Porter Martone would make a lot of sense for the Blackhawks because I think they do need a little bit more size up front. But Caleb Desnoyers, while he's not as big as Porter Martone, I think he plays big. And I think he's obviously, like, these guys are 18 years old. They're going to fill out more. I don't know. I like what he does. I've seen Caleb Desnoyers compared to like Sean Couturier, but a player who he really reminds me of, and you guys can tell me if I'm out of my mind or not, I see a lot of Mark Scheifele in Caleb Desnoyers.
Oh,
I love Mark Scheifele.
100%. He's not afraid to go to the greasy areas. Like a lot of, like, he has an insane shot and he can use that shot way more than he does. Like if you watch that kid's shot, he knows how to rip it, but a lot of his goals are in like the greasy area. He's like, in my opinion, other than Misa, one of the most complete centers in this draft. Misa and then another guy we'll get to who I absolutely love, but you know what I mean? So I see it 100%.
I think especially on the defensive side of the puck, I think Caleb Desnoyers is right at the top of this draft when it comes to guys who can not only push play forward. Like, I don't know if he's going to be, like, is he going to be a 1C? I'm not sure of, but I think he could be a very solid second shutdown center in the NHL.
Yeah, I think the high floor Yeah, I think the high floor also really projects him higher in this list. That's why I had him at 4. I think there's not as much risk with picking him. I think you can pretty much pencil him in on any of these teams as your 2C. And then there's upside to be a 1C. So it's all really a matter of how he develops, but you see the making there of an NHL center, sticking at the position, good all-around player, and probably very reliable in all situations, playoffs, no matter what, he's probably going to show up and perform.
Yeah. And I think if he's with the right winger, who can elevate his game and kind of, I think him being with the right wingers is also going to be important, because I think if he's with the right wingers, he could easily be a 1C, because he has all the tools in the world to do that, in my opinion. It's just
Yeah.
putting it together.
Luigi pointing out like elite prospects rated Desnoyers skating below Martone's, but I didn't
I don't-
see.
Nah,
I disagree there. I don't know. I mean, like, who am I? Am I a scout? No, I'm not. And again, like the recency bias and everything else I've seen, I've watched Caleb Desnoyers play more recently than Porter Martone, obviously, but I don't think it's. I kind of put them. The skating is definitely a question, but I have more questions with Martone's skating than Desnoyers.
Yeah,
But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, Martone skating, in my opinion, is also way worse. Not way worse, but
Not
worse.
way worse, but
no, you know what I mean. Yeah, not way worse, but Martone is, yeah.
All right, so at 5th, me and Mark have James Hagens at 5th, and Jules, you have Anton Frendel. So let's talk about James Hagens first, quick, and then I'll get you to defend Frendel over Hagens. James Hagens, 5'10", 177 pounds.
So much shit for this.
Hagens is, to me, he is your prototypical American forward. Like he's another one in this consistent line of forwards that Team USA has produced. He's in the same, like he reminds me of so many other American forward, like Will Smith, and like not as good as Jack Hughes, but like Jack Hughes and Logan Cooley, and like you just go down the list of American forwards, and he just fits that mold that they just keep producing like it's an assembly line. How does this happen?
I think it's the style. I think, even when you think back to Zegras, a lot of these young Americans, they want to play with the puck. It's all about the puck handling. It's not necessarily about getting in there and being physical. And it's some of these things that were fun to watch for a while, but I've kind of soured on a bit, right? Like with Hagens, it's just, I wasn't impressed with his freshman season. And here's the thing. I love the World Junior Championship, and I tend to rate that highly. So I'm kind of like torn here, because he did really well in that tournament. But I also am a huge college hockey guy. Mm-hmm. And I watched him this year, and I did not feel like he took over games. Now, I shouldn't be comparing him to someone like Celebrini, who I watched a lot the year prior and absolutely blew people away at college. But Hagen's a year older. He's pretty much almost eligible for last year's draft. If he's like a month older. He's more of a perimeter player. And I think also I'm looking at it from the Sharks lens. I think he's just duplicative. Like you said, Will Smith. I don't think we need another Hagens in our team. It's just, he's not providing anything that we don't have. And I don't think he's really better than what we do have. So I rated him lower than some of the guys above him, because I feel like they had a little bit more of a fit. So yeah, there's a little bit of a Sharks angle to this. But I also just think there's some risk with him turning into maybe just a perimeter playmaker at the NHL level.
What's your thoughts on Hagens, Jules?
I've said I'm not a huge fan of Hagens, and that's nothing against Hagens. I just first of all, like Mark said, looking at it from a Sharks angle, we really don't need another. We just don't need James Hagens, and that's nothing against James Hagens. I'm just we already have that, right? He had a really disappointing season in the NCAA, in my opinion. And I kind of expected more, especially playing with the line mates he did, like a Ryan Leonard and a Gabe Perreault. I know he didn't have the chemistry going into it like Will Smith had, but I kind of felt like expecting more. Now, don't get me wrong. He could turn out to be really good and blow everything up and throw this in my face. He's a very good playmaker. When he has the puck on his stick, he is dynamic and he can make plays. He's really good at attracting two guys on him, and that leaves one of his other, what's English?
Line-mates.
Thank you, boys. This is why I have you guys. That leaves one of his line mates open. He is really good at that. I think I have him ranked 6, not because I think he's bad. It's just I personally like the other 5 guys above him. But I don't he didn't show much this year to, lead me to rank him higher, if that makes sense.
Is that the reason? Because obviously coming into this season, before the season started, James Hagen was considered one of the tippy top prospects in this class. Is it just the season that he had at Boston College? Is that what dropped him, or do you think it's like a combination of that and just some of the other seasons that obviously some of his contemporaries had?
I think other players had better seasons, but I also don't think Higgins is falling to like 13 the way he like social media is taking it. Like I think the lowest he goes is 6th in this draft. But I think it's just
like he's not Cole Eiserman, obviously.
No, he's not Cole
No,
Eiserman.
no.
This isn't me. He's going to be a good player in the NHL. I just think other players had better seasons than Higgins did. And I personally I think you look at how GMs look at it, size unfortunately does matter in the NHL. And would you have the 6? How tall is Dano again? Like 6'2", 6'3"?
6'1".
6, yeah, whatever. Like, you look at that. I just, yeah, that's my point of view. Whether that's the right way to look at it or not, I just think GMs look at it a little bit that way.
Okay, fair enough.
So I defend Frundell now.
Yeah, let me just well, how, you know what? Explain Anton Frundell. Tell us who Anton Frundell is.
Okay, boys, you got to put some respect on Frundell as Mark drinks his apple juice. Look, Frundell had the highest points per game in Allsvenskan under 18 since like William Nylander, David Pasternak, all of those guys. Has a rocket of a shot. He's 6'1", pretty much all muscle, like 201. Like he is already he's growing into himself, and I think he's only going to get better. Yes, he might not be like that line driver that a Higgins or a Desnoyers is per se, but I think he has all the tools in the world to be a very good 1C for a team, very defensively responsible. And yeah, he has a little bit of Barkov in him. I'll say that. He's not super flashy. He won't necessarily dangle you out, but he'll be a nightmare matchup because he can defend against your best players. But he also, again, he knows how to read the offensive zone really well. He moves well, and he has a bomb of a shot. So I think there was rumors the Blackhawks are taking him at 3. Perfect fit for Bedard. Perfect fit. You can't.
Yeah, I mean, it checks a lot of the boxes that the same reasons why I kind of like have Desnoyers there. Like it does check a lot of those same boxes. I think the only problem that I have with Anton Frundell is like everything, like you read the scouting reports and everything else, but like anytime I've ever watched Anton Frundell, I've never been super impressed. Like I don't think he was particularly great at the World Juniors. Like he's never, you know what I mean, for a guy who's going to be 100%. A top 10 pick. Like, and again, this is why I will again remind everybody I am not a scout. I don't watch hours of tape on these guys. Like you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's the only thing like that gives me caution is just like in my limited viewings, and they are very limited. I've never been impressed.
I don't think he's a flashy player. I'll put that out. Like I say Higgins, McQueen, who we'll talk about next, is way more flashier than an Anton Frundell. But I think if you're talking about the two-way center draft, he is your prototypical two-way center monster down the middle who is like playing against men already in Sweden.
Yeah, and I think, and this is why I kind of had him in that next tier. I think any of those 3 players, it's interchangeable kind of where you put them in your lists. I think they all have varying degrees of upside, floor, combinations of size. It really depends on what your flavor of the week is. For me, Frundell is very good, and I think he has a chance probably of this group of making me look the stupidest by not putting him higher, just because I think his upside is very good. It's like you said with Barkov. I think he has that upside of being like team MVP caliber at the NHL because of all that he brings. That being said, I think I relate similarly to what Ian said in that when I've watched him, I never felt blown away where I was like, oh, this is a top 5 guy. I thought he was like a first round pick. And obviously now he's looking like a shoo-in for the top probably 6 or 7. But I think I just never personally, when watching him, felt that he blew me away. So, it's all there. He's got all the tools. It's just a matter of where he goes from here. And I know he did have a really strong second half of the season, so that kind of bodes well for him. But I just didn't put him higher because I think the upside for a guy like Higgins, if he did hit, is better. And for a guy like Desnoyers, I think I trust him at the current moment a bit more. But yeah, any of those 3 guys, I'd be perfectly fine. If
they're interchangeable.
At 4, I'd be fine with us taking any of them.
Yeah, that tier is a little interchangeable.
Yeah.
I now fully understand. Now processing that, I'm an idiot for not putting Martone. Mark was smart for that reason. But like all those three centers are interchangeable in a sense. I just have a little less confidence that Higgins actually fully becomes a center in the NHL. He might move to the wing. You know what I mean? Just depending on what team he's on, whatever. Like a Will Smith, like he just fit better in the wing in the NHL, right? Like we're also judging like 19-year-old kids here. So
yeah. All right. So let's talk about who let me see, we being me and Jules have Roger McQueen at 7. Now, Roger McQueen, obviously, to me, one of the more interesting players in this draft. Obviously, there's the injury concern, had a back injury that was misdiagnosed, and then they finally got it sorted out. Apparently was able to do everything at the combine, so that's obviously a really good sign. 6'5", 200 pounds. I mean, again, like he's who doesn't want a 6'5" center in the NHL?
I'm gonna throw something out here.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for this injury, this kid is a top 5 pick in this year's draft. I'd have him.
I 100% agree with that.
Fundell. I'd even have him over Porter Martone.
I think I'd have him at 3. Yeah.
Yeah. If it wasn't, and this is why, like, part of me was like, should I put this kid in his own tier? Because like there is so much potential with this kid. Like you watch this kid's highlight reel and like everything I've seen, he has all the tools in the world to become a 1C, right? It's just the back injury really set him back this year.
Yeah, see, and the thing with injuries, like I don't get too concerned with injuries because obviously young people heal better than old people do. I don't heal anymore. Like healing doesn't happen anymore.
Ian's day to day.
However, but that being said, back injuries are super scary, right? Like back injuries are one of those injuries that you could heal from, but it's not just because you're young and your bones are made of elastic bands you're going to recover from. Like there's no back injury. Gives me a lot of pause, obviously, but again, like this is a guy who's elite puck control, and I think he skates really well for a player of his size, right? Because like when you get to the 6'5" and 6'6", sometimes you skate okay, sometimes you skate like a giraffe, which is never good. You know what I mean? Like there's usually like
some
it's
Bambi
very
legs.
rare. Yeah, like it's very rare that when you get there, like when you get to those heights, your skating is better than okay. And Roger McQueen is one of those players where it 100% is better than okay, in my opinion.
I agree with both of you guys. And here's the thing. As a person actually who has a very bad back, I have a little bit of a soft spot or sensitivity, I'd say, to back injuries. And after seeing what happened with Lindstrom last year in the draft, didn't stop a team from picking him.
That's true.
But he also didn't play a lot this year until I think it was the final month or so, playoffs.
Yeah, and even in the Memorial Cup, he was playing every other game.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Like you said, talent-wise, I think he would be 3 or 4, no injuries, because he's 6'5", skates like the wind, can dangle, looks good in doing it, and you just don't get that out of a 6'5" center, right? But the back injury does scare me, and it's like if you're picking 5 or 4, are you waging your future on that? If you trust it and you've read the doctor's reports and you're fine with it, then I would have zero issues with anyone in this draft picking him as high as 3 or 4. But I just don't know that information, and with back injuries, I always kind of assume the worst. Yeah. So that's why I had him down at 8.
He did, and also he had like 4 goals in his first WHL game or whatever. Like literally, he just
from injury.
No, it was like before the injury happened. He had like 4 goals, like just in his like debut. Like again, like it's hard to. I know there's back injury. That's why I have him ranked at 7th. But like talent wise, he's a top pick, right? We can all agree there.
Yeah. All right. So at 7, Mark, you have Jake O'Brien. Introduce us to Jake O'Brien. Tell me about Jake O'Brien.
I think he's just a highly skilled player. He's also very young. He's on one of the younger sides of this draft, and I do tend to put some value on where someone was born or when someone was born. If you're like close to the prior year in draft, I mean, think about it. If you were born in October of 2006, you're kind of having a similar year to what Celebrini is in terms of your actual age, right? So I do value that, and I think he's a highly skilled player. I don't necessarily know if he's exactly what the Sharks need, but I put him here because I think he's a guy who might jump this year. He put up really good numbers in juniors. He's got very good playmaking abilities, very good puck skills, and I think he has the ability to be a highly high producing offensive center. And I think I think I saw that it was half his stats, half his production in juniors was on the power play. So he could run a power play. And when I've watched him, the very few times I have watched him, he does jump out. Now, again, he's playing against boys. I always kind of weigh that with juniors. But he's just a guy that when I saw him, he looked pretty good. And I know he's climbed a lot of lists this year. I saw someone in the chat mention who's going to be this year's Beckett Seneca, like who climbs, and I could see him being that guy who, if there's a dumb person like Verbeek picking him like 3 or 4, who's like, yeah, let's just take this guy, even though there's so many other good defensemen available. But yeah, it's basically like that's kind of how I view him. I think he's a guy who could jump. His skating's not the best, but it's not really a weakness, I would say. So I put him here just because after him and McQueen, the rest of the forwards just don't terribly impress me. And I know it's going to annoy some people because of Eklund being out there, but after this, it's pretty much all defensemen for me.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jules.
No. I was just going to say, yeah, O'Brien is really impressive to watch. Like you watch him and like that kid, his vision of playmaking is insane. Like he makes passes that you don't think are gonna go through. Like as I watched a few of his highlights and I was like, what is happening? Like really good kid. Again, one of the younger kids in the draft. And if he can bulk up a bit, and I say this because he's like 18 and one of the youngest in the draft, he could be a very two-way center that I've been screaming into this mic this whole time. So yeah, I see why you have him ranked that high. Like he's a sleeper, and I could easily see a team like Boston Flyers drafting him at like 5 or 6.
I think if, like, for me, I really struggled when I got to this part of the list, trying to figure out who to put where.
Same.
But like, so I have him at 10, but I do like the player a lot. I think that, like, for me, I have Radim Murtka at 8. I think he's the second best defenseman in the draft.
We about to fight.
He shoots. We can fight. That's fine. I think he's the right shot. I think too, when you look at, like, again, this is kind of where I kind of looked at, like, okay, who's picking here? And I look at what Seattle has in the pipeline, and they kind of have to take a D at some point, don't they? At 8, like that's why I that's why I have Murtka there. Because I think like it just makes a lot of sense for Seattle given what they have in their pipeline.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Murtka would make a ton of sense there. Let me talk about Murtka here, I guess, for a quick second here. Obviously, 6'5", 207. I mean, he's your prototypical two-way NHL defender, in my opinion. Like, if everything pans out, like he does everything you want from a two-way defender in the NHL.
Yeah, and like actually, Jules, go ahead.
I was just going to say the only reason I don't have Murtka high, like with this tier of players that we're about to cover, it's not that like I don't like them. It's just I like the players above them more. But it's honestly a fucking like throwing the darts to a certain degree, right? Like at the end of the day, it's like everyone's going to have their own preference. The thing I really like about Murtka is he reminds me a little bit of Anton Salayev of last year's draft, where big towering defenseman. He can skate pretty well for his size. Like, let's not get that mistaken. A lot of those like 6'5" defensemen, they look like they're like struggling to move on skates. Like he skates pretty well. The only reason I don't have him higher is just I like Jackson Smith a little more, and I know he's left-handed. But yeah, he gives me Salayev vibes from last year for sure.
So tell us about Jackson Smith. Obviously, the player you have there. That's a great segue. Tell us about Jackson Smith.
Skates like the wind, can run an offense. Like he has elite vision, in my opinion. Again, I'm going to go back to last year's draft. The same concerns that were around Dickinson are around Smith a little, where it's like sometimes he'll just give it away and he'll panic under pressure. I think him going to the NCAA next year in Penn State, he'll be able to kind of develop even more. But like he has all the tools to put it together. 6'3", 200 some. I don't remember his fucking weight. I'm sorry. There's a lot of prospects in this draft. Don't come at me. But if you look at this kid, he can run a power play. He can control the offensive zone. He's a monster in transition. To me, I just value that a little bit more than Murtka because of the offensive potential I see with Smith. And I know lefty, righties are more rare. To me, I'd rather take the offensive potential with Smith. And if he can put it together and just fix up some of those like hiccup moments that, a young D-man has, especially Smith, he'll be a top guy in the NHL, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I didn't have Smith in my top 10. I probably would have had him right outside of it, but I did finish my top 10 with another couple defensemen, Merca being the first one. I think the reason why I didn't have any of these D-men higher is the uncertainty and the fact that I feel like none of them probably turn into a top pairing D-man. There are some that have varying degrees of higher upside, but even looking at a guy like Merca, I feel I want to draft him because I see him as second pairing for the next 15 years, right? This guy, he just skates well, good breakout pass. I actually don't know how well his offense will translate to the NHL, but I do see a guy who will be able to get pucks out of the zone and transition, and that's what I care more about these days. Like, Makar is a god. Quinn Hughes is a god. But these guys everyone's chasing that because of how much fun they are and how good they are. And the reality is they are unique, right? You don't find those every day. So I am actually more interested in filling out our lineup with like second pairing guys and guys who maybe have first line upside, but our first pairing upside. And that's where I look at Merca. The next guy I had listed too, which we can get to after. But even all the guys we're going to cover that are D-men, the rest of this podcast pretty much are all guys that I think second pairing. They have that upside. Maybe they become a partner for a high-end first pairing defenseman, but I think they're all like second pairing guys, which is very, very valuable. You look at the Panthers who just won. Do they really have any elite defensemen? I don't think they do. I don't think they have a Hughes or a Makar. They have a bunch of good defensemen, and that's really what I want the Sharks to have in the future.
Yeah. So I'm just going to do this list, make sure I'm not missing anybody, just because we've kind of covered. We obviously like our lists kind of really diverge at this point. And I feel like we've talked about everyone that everyone has up until 9 at this point, except for I have Victor Eklund at 9. I'm not sure Victor Eklund is going to be a top 10 pick in this draft, and the only reason I say that is just because of when you look at like a lot of the bigger centers that are available this draft, and I think that might push Eklund out of the top 10, but I really like Victor Eklund a lot. I think he, to me, like another guy who just like motor, like just endless motor for Victor Eklund. He just go. I think he's going to be a better goal scorer than his brother. I think his brother's the better playmaker overall. Like I think his brother has the better overall game. But I think like scoring wise, I think Victor Eklund has the ability to score better than William. But again, like the problem is right, 5'11", 161 pounds. But I still think like he plays bigger than that. But the problem is once you get to the NHL, playing bigger doesn't always work when you're playing against men in the NHL. I really like Victor Eklund. I think that he should be a top 10 pick. I just think that given the team's drafting and some of the other players available, he might fall out of the top 10 and it's going to be no fault of his own.
So can I jump in here real quick? Because I basically have a tier, and I'm just going to call it the pain in the ass tier of players to play against. And it's the Carter Bears, Victor Eklunds. I even have Mertka in that tier. He doesn't really fit in that tier, but he's ranked high. And Brady Martin. I honestly had no clue who the hell to put at this 10th spot when doing this list. It was just kind of like, who do I like more? But Victor Eklund is 11th on my board. Like he played also against men. He played with Frendel in that league, and yeah, he's gonna be a monster. He's one of the best forecheckers, if not the best forechecker in the draft. And every shift he's go, right? And I just want to shut this down real quick. We are not trading up to select Victor Eklund at whatever. The trades I've seen to get this kid is insane. But yeah, like I have a tier just called pain in the ass players to play against, and they remind me a lot of Seth Jarvis in a sense where like they're constantly on the puck, they're constantly forechecking, they're constantly hitting. They're just a pain in the ass to play against. And yes, they might be smaller players, not Mertka. Exclude Mertka from that. He's ranked in that category, but exclude him for that just for this point. Like they're pretty valuable come playoffs when they're not afraid to get into like the greasy areas or whatnot. Sorry, that was a rampage.
Yeah, no, you're good. I like Eklund. I think he I don't have him in my top 10 mostly just because I feel like he's a bit redundant again for the Sharks. I do think he ends up a top 6 wing on an NHL team, and I could even see the scenario where he's better than William, especially like you said from the goal scoring perspective. But yeah, I think any team that gets him will be very happy to get him, especially in a couple of years as he develops. I think I picked most of my other guys ahead of him due to either the value they provide a team, some of their upside, certain things like that. But yeah, he's a very fine player. And if the Sharks, for some reason, let's say he fell to the mid-teens and the Sharks somehow traded up to get him, I would not complain.
Oh yeah, I'm not. I am not complaining there either. So that leaves us a couple of players that we haven't talked about yet. I'll go to you first, Mark. Tell me about Kishwan Atchison.
Yeah, so he is a defenseman who absolutely blew up this year. Scored 24 goals. He had a good previous D-1 or D-2 year, or is it? Yeah, it's D-1 leading into the draft year. This year, he blew up 24 goals, points per game, and I really like the style he plays. This guy hits. He's intense. He's a good skater. He will fight if he needs to. He is pretty much just full of energy, and I like watching him play, and I would love to have a prospect like him in the Sharks pool. I feel like he would be a great complementary player in the future who could even run a power play. So I see a guy like him, and I feel like that's where I'm very much debating between him and Merka, because I think Merka has a more a higher floor, and I feel way safer saying he's an NHL defenseman who's going to contribute and be of value. But then a guy like Aitchison, I see him and I'm like, this guy has the upside. Like if everything worked out, I could see him being a top pairing defenseman. Now, will it work out? Probably not. He might settle in as a second pairing defenseman who can play in all scenarios. But I just really liked everything I saw about him. The only thing I will note, he's actually, I think, one of the oldest first time draft eligible players in this draft. He was pretty much like a week away from being in last year's draft. So hurts him a little bit, but I'm just a very big fan of him. And I think his intensity would do very well in, say, like a playoff situation, as long as he gets a little bit smarter with when he's like throwing his hits and playing physical.
Okay. And Jules, you have at 10, you have Carter Bear. Tell me about Carter Bear.
Yeah, I think one of the more underrated players in this draft. I'll just throw it out there. I've seen him. He's kind of ranked all over the place, so this is low key a reach. He is very much so ranked all over the place. He's in my pin in the ass category players, but he did put up 40 goals in 56 games with 42 points with Everett this year. He is the most hardworking, flies everywhere. Like this guy never takes a shift off, and I think he is the perfect player to fit into the NHL playoffs. Like if you're looking to win, you need a player like Carter Bear. He can basically do everything for you. He's kind of like Brady Martin, where he's not afraid to hit. He's just, and he has the goal scoring touch. I think he has this offense will translate. But like he's a guy that if you're looking to fill out a team, he's one of the guys you want to have on your team. And I just really like him. He's like, whenever I watch him, he's just constant hardworking. I hate to say this because I bully my career for saying this, but he definitely plays the right way. And if you're asking me between like Eklund, Martin, and oh my god, like Eklund, Martin, and Bear, I just had to pick between one of those three, and I went with Carter just because I really like what he provides, and kind of underrated in my humble opinion in this year's draft.
All right, so something else that we did was we just kind of had we just circled some players that we thought might be interesting for the late first round picks. Like this, basically we're talking picks 30, 33, and 53, provided they do not get traded. As we know that obviously Mike Greer had picks in a similar range last year and then turned them into Sam Dickinson. So, but at this point, so I thought we would just kind of go through some names here just of guys, and someone who showed up on all of our lists is Sasha Boumediene. Mark, tell me about Sasha Boumediene. Why would you be interested in him with one of those later picks?
Fantastic skater. He's a defenseman, like I've seemed to fetishize this year. He is a great skater. Just played his 17-year-old season in the NCAA and played pretty well with BU. His offensive numbers didn't really pop, but they were a lot better, or he looked a lot better the second half of the season. I'd like to point out he absolutely crushed the under 18s. I think it was 2 points per game there with Sweden, brought them a silver medal. And I just see a guy there whose skating is going to bring him to the NHL. I think he's a great skater, and his decision making is good enough where really, if he just rounds out his game, he is guaranteed to be an NHL defenseman. It's just a matter of which pairing. Is he a third pairing guy, a second pairing guy? That's TBD. I don't think he has enough offense to be, say, like a power play quarterback. But I just really liked the little bit I saw of him in Hockey East this year. And I think if you're getting him at 30, 33, or even later in the second round, you're running away very happy.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the only concern I probably have with Boumediene is that he just isn't on the board when the Sharks make any of those selections, unfortunately. But I do think like if he's there, he is an obvious pick. Another defenseman that we all kind of have circled is Sam Dickinson's line mate partner from London this year, Henry Brisnevich. Do you want to talk about Henry Brisnevich, Jules?
Yeah, I mean, he just plays so simple. He has a simple game. He just very reliable, right? And he played with Sam Dickinson very well, right? If the Sharks are looking for like, and I know OHL doesn't translate to NHL, so before all of you come screaming that in the chat, I am aware, please. I just think he plays such a reliable game, and he's exactly what the Sharks need. Good in transition and can shut down the other team, and right-handed. Like, pole camp is great, but I don't think we just can't have one pole camp, right? I think he'd be a perfect fit for the Sharks prospect pool and what they're looking for. And he played a pretty important role on the London team that won the Memorial Cup. And he just got better as the year went along. Will offensively he translate? Maybe. I don't see him as a first pairing like guy. But like Mark said, past like Schaefer, you're looking at like probably second pairing guys. I just really like the stability he provides in his game. And I think
I like his older game because I think one thing like I want to make clear here because there's a couple of names that I'm going to bring up and again some of this is just recency bias, some of this is just guys that I have more watches of, and the one thing like it's all nice to be like, oh yeah, but these guys kicked ass in junior together, but like that rarely ever works in the NHL. Like the only time in the NHL I can ever think of that working was like that brief spell in Chicago when they put Strome and DeBrincat together, and they just went off for a few games, and then Strome ended up in the doghouse again, and that was all put to an end. But like, it rarely ever works out, right? So like, I just want to make very clear that when we say a name like that, it's not because it's like, oh well, him and Sam Dickinson are so good together, so they're going to be a great NHL pair. I don't think that they should be on the same pair in the NHL. But I agree with a lot of the things you say about like, I like his game. I like the simplicity of it. I like the two-way. I just think again, he's a player who I think has the potential to be a very good two-way middle pair blue liner in the NHL. Mark, anything you want to add on Brisnevich?
Yeah, the one thing I'll add for him actually is what is typical of London players too. When you see these younger draft eligible guys, a lot of times they're kind of behind, say, a Bonk or a Dickinson. And while he played minutes with Dickinson, he didn't get quite the other opportunities.
Right.
I think his minutes are going to explode this year as Bonk and Dickinson both probably leave London.
Graduate. Yeah.
And you could see his numbers blowing up there. So he's one of those guys where I think a lot of the abilities are there. And like you will both said, I don't see first pairing, but I think he's a guy who has the ability to develop into a very valuable NHL defenseman.
Yeah. A guy that I circled, just I'm gonna go a random guy that I circled. I have on my board. I have Carter Amico, who fascinates me. Let me tell you about Carter Amico. Carter Amico is a 6'5", 225 pound right shot D-man who excels in shutdown role. And I think that he also has the ability to move the puck the other way. So you're probably thinking, well, what's the catch? Injuries. Injuries has been the catch. And I think Carter Amico, unfortunately, who's played with the national team development program when he's been healthy, the problem is his injuries have kind of added up. And again, I think this is a guy who skates really well for a guy who's 6'5". The problem is obviously is knee injury, which is scary. The other thing too, like it's just I find him to be such a fascinating player. But the other problem too that I worry about with Carter Amico is he's a guy who he's pretty raw, and I do worry about the Sharks being able to develop that into something, because I feel like the Sharks do a good job when they kind of know what a player is and they can kind of do that. I always get nervous in their development pool, in their development system, with guys that are just kind of raw talent. I do have concerns about AHL development. So I don't know, but I still think, like, I think if he can get healthy, and that's obviously a big if, and it's a big red flag, but I think if he can get healthy, I think somebody is going to draft this dude in the second round. And I think if he can get healthy, he's going to be one of those guys where you're going to be like,
How did he fall?
how did he get, yeah, like how is he, how did he go there?
He's also committed to Boston University. Just throwing
That's true. Yeah, he is going to go to the right school apparently when it comes to.
Sorry, I had to make that joke once in this video. No, Amico's fascinating. Injuries really kind of derailed his season, but there was like reading his elite prospect. There were rumors that he was going to go like a first rounder. Like he was supposedly at so he's fascinating. Another guy that sorry, Ian, I'm jumping the gun here, but Blake Fiddler. Before I forget, I do want to talk about him. He his skating is not top tier by any stretch, but he's also like the perfect fit for what the Sharks need. Not top pairing, but second pairing. The definition. This is what I meant. Like there's a niche of just shut down defensemen that I think have a lot of second line potential, and he is that. He's a good in transition, can shut down the play. 6'4" right shot D. He's a guy that I would love. Now, I don't think he's going to be available I think there's a chance he's available at 30, but in reality, the Sharks might have to trade up for him. But I think he'd be a great fit for the Sharks. I know Mark also likes this.
Yeah,
guy.
Mark has him on his list too. Mark, anything you want to add on?
I would just echo everything you said. I think he's more of like the shutdown mold, more defensively responsible. I actually do think there's a chance he'll be available at our picks. I think a lot of these guys, there's just so much range there. And I feel like with this year not being a terribly strong on the depth side, you can see a lot of random guys in that second round projection jumping into the 20s, because a lot of people have thought of this tier in like the 20 to 50 range of all kind of being the same. So if I was the Sharks, I'm actually hoping they don't trade up. I really hope they just use their pick on any of one of these defensemen we've mentioned that's still available. If they were to trade up, I'd rather them trade up a bit further in the draft and kind of just say, get rid of all the second rounders and just move up to the teens. But yeah, I'm good with Fiddler. I like him. I think the one thing I also wanted to add a quick comment on, because Ian, you said this, I still am also not at a place where I fully trust the Sharks development system yet.
Yeah.
I think that's been an issue for quite some time. And while I like our drafting a bit more, you look at our recent history of drafting and we haven't really developed a lot of guys. Like you can't say we developed Celebrini. Celebrini came in and he was Celebrini, right? Like
correct.
We haven't really developed anyone through the AHL. So I want to see that and get confidence first before some of these guys that I have listed kind of as like project players. But I think that was just a point that you made that resonated with me because I feel exactly the same.
Yeah. Net for Presidents. I'll hit this and we kind of go back to the list a little bit here. Net for President asking, do the Sharks grab a goalie in the second to add a future backup? Me and Jules have a goalie both on our list. Tell us about Alexei Medvedev.
He plays for London, and I wanted to make Ian mad.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking.
This is what we need. We need another European hate watching London.
Look, like he's a athletic goalie. Can move well. Like I'm not really the best with goalies, and there's no one in this draft where I'm like, yes, the Sharks must draft a goalie. But if I were to throw a dart at one of these goalies, I'd want a toolsy athletic goalie. And Medvedev is the guy, and he'll probably get the net for London and get a ton of experience playing in important games. Why not?
So Medvedev, like I've seen Medvedev play. I was impressed. Obviously, he played behind a very, very good London Knights team. He is going to be the starter next year, so I'm curious to see how he performs there. He's definitely in that range of guys. I think I like.
Jack Ivankov is another.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is like I don't think when the Sharks are picking, I don't think Ravenberg is probably the best goalie in the draft. But there's no way he's like I can put him on the list, but there's no way, in my opinion, he's available to the Sharks pick at any of those picks. But I did like I liked Ivankovic. He I thought he was good in the World Juniors. Anytime I've seen him, I've been impressed. Again, it's goalies voodoo. Black magic. So
I will say though, I don't want them picking a goalie until 53, and I just think Ivankovic might be gone before that pick.
Probably,
because in my opinion, I'd rather use those 30 and 33, and on like that little pocket of like right shot or left shot D that are shut down pairing D or that are good in transition. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and like Luigi saying, if Fafang was 6'3", he's going in the first round. Yeah.
Oh, 1,000%. Because again, size is GMs love size.
Yeah,
Mark,
and I'll say it.
go
I'll
ahead.
just say it quickly because this is the one thing I think I say every single year. I'm firmly in the no goalies in the first 2 rounds camp.
Fair enough.
I don't trust in them. I don't believe in them, and I think far too often that pick turns out to be a waste. And I know a lot of people are high on the juniors goalie this year, but I also hate drafting goalies out of the CHL. I think you look at even the Sharks' history, and those were mostly like 4th and 5th rounders, so it's not that big of a deal. But I feel like goalies, like you said, are such voodoo, and they're also really not that hard to get. Like, it's hard to get a superstar goalie, but even just look what Blackwood cost this year. He's a very good goalie. Team got him for, what was it, a 2nd-round pick? Like, if you need a goalie in the future, just trade for him. I'd let someone else worry about developing them, and then we just trade for them in the future.
Someone who also was across our list, Mark, can tell us about Ivan Rabikin.
Yeah, so he was originally supposed to be a top 10 pick this year. I am very impressed with his skill. I think when you watch him, you could be convinced he's like a Demidov light, or just another stylistically Russian forward who has a lot of skill, can put the puck in the net, and is fun to watch. He obviously has some issues with commitment levels, issues with character, and a lot of that has kind of tanked his value this year. He started off, I believe, in the KHL, did not do well there, had issues with it was management or something with the club, and then decided to come to the U.S., which I think is actually kind of a boost, being that he's already here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
But in USHL, put up good numbers, but he's a guy I'd like to take a waiver on, more of like a lottery ticket type. So 30, 33, if he fell to 50, is it 53 or 57?
53.
53. If he fell to 53, fine. I'm happy with him there. I think he has immense upside, but it's a matter of whether you can get this player's head on right.
Yeah, I'm with that. Sorry, Ian.
Right. That pretty much sums it up. Jules, you have Cole Reshny on your list. Tell us about Cole Reshny.
Again, I don't know if he falls to the Sharks because, like Mark said, this category is really like anyone can go at any time. Give me a second. My notes on this kid are on my other sheet. I have too many names. Again, elite passer. Just, again, one of the better playmakers, in my opinion, in this draft. Great vision. Committed to the University of North Dakota, so he'll get that NCAA development. Again, another center. I just think if he falls, it's a value pick, and you can get a very good top 9 player who can score, who can put the puck behind and the net. All around has a really good game. Again, is a little bit underrated, but I think that passing skill is just hard to pass up, especially at 30. And I've seen him ranked everywhere also, so I can't be like, he will be there, he won't be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, another player I have on my list is Christian Epperson. Epperson is a D+1 player, 5'11", 183. He played on Saginaw. He played with Michael Misa. But the thing that stood out to me anytime that I watched Epperson play was he was like, you would think, oh yeah, he put up 80 points, next Michael Misa, big deal. But the thing that he's not a passenger on that line, right? And then like when Chernyshov comes in, he's still not a passenger on that line. I think he's a guy who I thought, when he gave Saginaw so many options to like drive play. I think he drives play really well. I think that if you look at guys who are beyond their first draft, of the guys who went through last year's draft and they get drafted, and I think he is the best of that group, and I think he's the best by a significant margin. Recency bias of a player that I've seen, but I think he's going to be a guy who probably goes somewhere in the second round. And if he happened to make it to the Sharks, I think there's something that they can work with there. I
mean, we can make that whole line again.
Again, not because you want to make
I'm joking. No, a guy I forgot to put on the list because Jules is an idiot is Cameron Schmidt, 5'7", which immediately is going to tank his value because he's 5'7". But he has one of the best shots I've ever seen. He's really physical for being 5'7". Like, he's not afraid to go to the grease areas and throw the body. I think because he's such a small winger, he is inevitably going to fall. And if the Sharks want to take a flyer on him in like 53, or even whenever their third round pick is, if he continues falling, it's worth it. I think Elite Prospects had this comparison. He's a jacked up Alex DeBrincat. That was the player comparison.
Sold.
But he has an insane shot, not afraid to get physical for being 5'7". So yeah, I think if he starts slipping, I would love for the Sharks just to take a flyer on him at like 53 or 96 or 115, right? Because again, size. GM, stop being not smart.
I dig it. Yeah. Any other players that you guys want to?
I had one other.
Sure. Sorry.
Vaclav Nestrasil.
Mm-hmm.
He's projected to be a second rounder, and I think more towards the tail end. So I just included him. I had to include him. He's a token UMass commit. So, but also he's a big body. He's a big winger. I think he's 6'5", and he's got a lot of raw tools. I think he's supposed to be doing one more year in like Des Moines, the USHL level, and then going to UMass in 26. But I just like what I read about him mostly, that he's a guy who's going to take some time, develop. He'll go the college route, and in 3-4 years, maybe you have a guy who can fit on your top 6 in the wing. And he's got the NHL size. And I'm going to say the opposite of what Jules said. I don't want any more of these short kings. We've got plenty of short kings on the Sharks, all right? We got Luka coming up. We've got Smith. Celebrini is not short and he's not small, but he's also not big. Like, we need to fill this lineup with some big guys. And that's why I got like Vaclav Nestrasil interests me later in the draft.
Yeah, I dig it. Since we've kind of gone through our list, something I was hoping we could park some time for, and I think we have time. I think everyone's fine for time right now. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you guys make of the new world of everything, obviously with the NCAA rules changing? Like, what impacts do you think it's going to have going forward, I think, on player development? And
I think it's going to change when players, this is going to sound obvious, but like, let's look at Sam Dickinson as a prime example. If the Sharks knew that he could go off to college, he would have not signed the ELC when he signed his ELC. So I think it's going to change when players are getting signed, but I also think it's great for some of these junior guys, and like the questions we have about junior guys, like, hey, like, can they play at the next level of competition? It makes the jump between like the CHL and AHL a little bit more stomachable, because a player can, let's say, go from the CHL to the NCAA, or if a player's struggling in the NCAA, they can go to the CHL. So I personally love it. I think it gives teams a little bit more to think about of like, when should this player sign his ELC? Because again, if you're in the CHL and sign your ELC, you can't go to college. But I love it. I think it's great for development.
I agree. So as a huge college guy, I think it's going to make college better. So I really love that aspect. I think it might hurt juniors a bit in terms of the overall talent level. And if you think you've heard enough now about playing against boys, it's going to get even worse.
Yeah.
But I really think developmentally it makes sense, right? These guys who are coming up the junior rank previously, they're pretty much stuck there or the NHL, right? Until they're 20. They can't go to the AHL. And that's kind of what we're seeing now with Dickinson. Like, what does Dickinson do next year? He can't go to college.
Yeah.
If he's not NHL ready, he has to go back to a league he just absolutely torched and really can't develop any further from. So I think it's a great decision. I think it'll help the developmental path of these 18 and 19-year-olds. And, you do juniors first if you want. Then you can go to college. And I think juniors are going to become that great league for like 16 to 18-year-olds. College will become that great league for 18 to like 22 or even really 24, 25-year-olds. And then you have the NHL after that. So I like it. I really don't see a downside.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I like that concerns me as a guy who's a junior hockey guy, I don't think it's like a lot of people are saying it's like the death of junior hockey, but I don't think that's true. It might change the way teams develop, and I think it is going to be harder. It might be harder for some teams to retain their talent. Like, I think if, like, for the OHL is obviously the league that I watch most closely. I think if you're like the Oshawa Generals or the Kingston Frontenacs or the London Knights, you're going to have an easier time keeping your players and from going to the NCAA. I think if you're a place like Sault Ste. Marie, which gets a crap ton of snow and is like the longest, like one of the more longer traveled teams for the Ontario Hockey League, I do worry about like that from a perspective. But I think it also like it works both ways though, because I think there's going to be guys that maybe they get bumped out of their spot, but they're still really good that are going to go the other way. And that might end up like, you know what I mean? If you have a guy who maybe gets bumped out of a job in college, like maybe they come this way. Like we got a defenseman coming to the Greyhounds this year, who's coming from the NCAA, and everyone's super excited. So I don't think it's like the death of it, and I don't think like the leagues that I'm more concerned with, I think, are the leagues below. I think like the BCHLs of the world. I do worry about the USHL a little bit too. From that perspective, I think they might get hurt a little bit by it, because obviously the USHL was obviously a great league to go to if you're going to go to college, because it didn't mess with your eligibility. But now that that's no longer an issue, I do worry about the USHL a little bit in this. I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes forward. And but I think there's going to be, I don't think it's the death, because I think the one thing that people also have to remember is like, in order to you're a student athlete, so you have to have the student part too. And not all these guys are students. So I don't know, like I'm not as worried about it as like from an overall perspective. I do worry about some of the smaller market junior teams that I think are going to have a harder time bringing in players and keeping them. And I think that's the only thing I worry about, is just competitive balance, where the rich kind of get richer.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, I got one other topic. So
Sure.
since we are talking about the draft, entirely want to know what your thoughts are in terms of draft strategies. So like we all think Sharks are picking 2, right? We're not trading that pick.
No.
But I personally would love to see kind of the reverse Philip Beestead trade. So when we traded down for Beestead from 11, and we now have, what is it, 30, 33, and 53, which I think could get us into the high, right below the number 10 pick or somewhere in that range. I personally would love to see us trade there if some of these names we talked about are available, because I think the Sharks are in a place where they need to fill in guys who are going to be in the NHL lineup. And we already had our drafts with all the extra picks. You know, we've had a bunch of firsts, a bunch of seconds in the last few drafts. And even next year, we still have 2 firsts and 2 seconds. So I personally would love to see them come away with, say, a Mertka and Misa, or a Aitchison and Misa, or even some of the other names we talked about. I mean, even if they traded up to get Eklund, another top 6 winger that maybe fits in, because you never know. Maybe Chernyshov doesn't pan out. Maybe Misa doesn't pan out. So
right.
I personally am kind of tired of all the later picks and would love to see them move up to get someone that they're really high on. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I wouldn't mind that, especially if like a Mertka starts slipping for whatever God knows reason. Like if Radim Mertka starts falling and Mike Greer feels like he can trade up and grab him, getting Misa and Mertka in this draft would be probably a dream scenario for the Sharks. It's like last year, Buyam and Celebrini that I was banging the drums on. If a guy starts slipping, or that, you know, in the teens, why not, right? Like we have depth. Like depth is not our issue with our prospect pool. It's right shot defensemen and D in general. So if a guy starts slipping, I would not be opposed to trading all of our fucking second round picks plus 30 to get him, or especially to get Mertka, right? Like especially if he's there at 15 or 14. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me a second here.
Throw Ferraro in while you're at it.
Throw Ferraro.
Stop. I am still a Ferraro apologist. I like him. Bottom pairing minutes, keep him.
If you put him in the right scenario, he's fine. He's playing way above his fucking pay grade.
He cannot be a top pairing 23 minutes or whatever guy.
But Steve Yzerman, if you would like to give us your first round pick and a ton of other stuff, like a Jake Wallman scenario like last year, feel free to.
Anytime.
Luigi asking, what are my thoughts on Greyhounds, Brady Martin and Chase Reed as prospects? Yeah, okay. So Brady Martin first. I think Brady Martin is awesome. I think he's a guy who, in my opinion, is a wild card. I think he can go. He's a guy who could very easily sneak into the top 10 of this draft. I think he's such like. He reminds me of Sam Bennett a little bit. Like he's that pain in the ass, just awful, awful player to play against. I love Brady Martin so much.
That's why he's in my the ass category.
Yeah, like he is. I think he's one of those players. I think that he has the potential to sneak in the top 10. I couldn't put him in the top 10 on my list just based on. I feel really good about the players that I put there, but like, could I have made a case for Brady Martin? Yeah, I love him. I think he's gonna be the main guy on this Greyhounds team next year. I think he's gonna be he's gonna be the guy next year, man. And I am looking forward to seeing it because I think he's awesome. He's such a pain in the ass to play against, and he has a really good toolkit outside of that. Yeah, he's one of my favorite. Like when I go to Greyhound games, he's one of my favorite players to watch. Chase Reed, right shot D, I like him. I think he played really well for the Greyhounds this year. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. He's a draft eligible for next year. I'm looking forward to seeing how he progresses. I really like Chase Reed, but yeah, he's a player like I'm looking forward to seeing more develop. I think now that he's draft eligible, I'll probably pay more attention. He is my son's favorite player though, so there's that.
Thing also with Brady Martin is he will hit anything that is moving or that is visible to him. He is probably one of the best hitters in the CHL this year, or was one of the best hitters in the CHL, and like a guy you win with in the playoffs, 110%. Trade Liljegren and Wenberg for pick 17. Oh,
Montreal doesn't do that.
yeah,
no chance.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
If they do, you're just laughing at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I didn't realize he is going to Michigan. So Chase Reed is actually going to Michigan State next year. I completely missed that, so I am not going to get to watch him next year, which makes me sad. But I liked him. Again, he's a guy who put up a decent number of points. Being a younger guy, obviously, you're not going to get the you're not going to be relied on to play as big of minutes. But I think in the minutes he played, I always liked him.
So what is our dream scenario? Like last year, I think we all were like Celebrini and Buyam is like the dream, or Celebrini and just one of those like top 6 defensemen in that draft. What is it like your guys' dream draft for the Sharks this year going into?
So if we trade up, I think it would be Misa and Aitchison or Mertka.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we don't trade up, I'd like it to be Misa and then 2 of Fiddler, Brasevich, and Boumediene, and then Ryabkin later on. That's kind of just like you get your 2C, you get 2 defensemen, so maybe hopefully one of them works out, and then you get another guy with immense upside.
I agree. Yeah.
I can't really disagree. I can't really disagree.
Thanks,
with
Mark.
that. Like I would love no, it's true though, but
no,
I agree. Like
it's great.
Because I look at this team, right? And obviously like I'm obviously going to be tilted more towards the blue liners because I do think it's a weakness and it's something that they need to address. Like I like Polkamp. I think Polkamp's going to be good, but he's not a 1D in the NHL. Like I think he's going to I think he's going to be an NHL guy, but I don't think he's a 1D, and maybe none of those guys are. But the right side is so weak, so
yeah,
it's got to be something that they address somehow, and it's one of those positions that's unfortunately really hard to address in trade.
Yeah,
like it's one of those things where you kind of have to go big game hunting in free agency because it's hard to get, especially a young right D in trade, that they're just hard to pry out of another team's hands.
I think the only one that's in trade rumors, and I hate, is he right? Yeah, this Nemec that was in trade rumors, but I just don't think New Jersey's moving him.
Yeah, rumors and actual are.
Yeah, that's
unfortunately. I don't know. That's
If
kind of how
Polkamp
I
had
feel.
size, yes. If Polkamp, unfortunately, yeah.
Like, I like Polkamp. I don't want people to think like I don't like him. People bring him up like, and maybe he is the best right shot defenseman in the system, but I think that's a testament to how not great the system is.
Yeah,
at that point, right?
We got to be targeting Hensler and Fiddler with the trade up around 18 to 20. Those are two. Hensler's interesting. Again, like there's that tier of like just middle. Hence, I would not mind Hensler, honestly. He's a guy who is, I think, projected to go top 15 at the start of the year, and I think he's now moved to like top 20 or top even 22.
Yep.
I wouldn't necessarily want to trade up for him personally, but again, Hensler or Fiddler I wouldn't mind trading up for, like if the option's there, because I really like those two as players. But yeah,
I feel like I've asked you this on a previous show, Mark. But what's your take on Hensler?
Here's the thing with him. I think I would be okay trading, let's say 30 and 53 up. I don't want to give up all 3 picks to move up for him. I think he's one of those. I didn't really talk about him much or list him because he's right in that zone of where I just don't think the Sharks are going to end up.
Sure.
I think the Sharks either take a big jump or they kind of stay where they are. Maybe they move up a pick or two. But yeah, he's probably maybe the 4th best defenseman, the 5th best defenseman, depending on how you view certain guys in the draft. So he's ahead of the 3 names that I talked about for 30 and 33, but I just don't know if he's worth trading up. But he was originally supposed to be like a top 5, top 10 pick.
top 10,
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
He was projected to go super high.
Yep.
What value would you get for packaging 30 and 33 for an NHL ready player?
That's really hard to say. Like, I think that can move you up to the 20, maybe early 20s if you're in the draft, but it's just so hard to compare that to NHL players. Like,
especially with
this
draft, this year's draft value is just like the draft pick value is super low. It feels like, you know what I mean? Like it's not as high as your like next year's draft where it's going to be like to trade a pick in the first round next year's probably nearly impossible, right?
What do you think? Actually, that's a great question, and maybe we'll end there. Is what are you guys looking forward? What do you guys think of next year's draft so far? Because I'm not super I'm enamored by the top end. Obviously, like Gavin McKenna is that guy, but beyond that, I'm not super enamored with the draft class next year. Mark, where are you at?
I'm kind of in the same. And even McKenna, he's another small wing. Now he's absolutely elite looking. So yes, I would be very happy for the Sharks to win the lottery and get him. But it's just a matter of the rest of that draft so far hasn't jumped at me. I know there's a few other guys at the top. I think they've said for the most part it's going to be a little bit stronger than this year's draft. So some teams may look and value 2026 picks a bit higher. But it's really hard to say at this point because even looking at Schaefer, he was like an 8 or 7 or a 6 coming like at this time last year. Then over the summer, he really kind of shot up. And then in the fall, he really shot up to the point where it was like from that point on, he's been number 1. So I'm sure we'll have another 1 or 2 guys come out of nowhere and become either number 2 or 3. But McKenna's going number 1, and we're going to at best have a 25% chance of that.
Yeah. I think McKenna definitely leads the way in that draft. There are a lot of guys I like in that draft that have stood out to me. But I do think it's a better draft than this year's draft. I will say that even a year out. Will that come to bite me in the ass? Probably. But I just think those top 10 picks next year are a little bit more valuable than the top 10 picks this year. I'll say that.
All right. Well, I think that's good. I think we can end on that. Thanks, guys, for doing the work and coming on and making this fun. I always look forward to this. If you're looking for obviously more draft coverage, there will be draft coverage. Mark, are you going to come on the 4-hour live stream? Yeah,
Marathon, of course.
I love it.
For this every year. This is my marathon.
Jules, you're going to be at the draft party, yes?
Yeah, but I'm bringing my computer and mic so that I will go into a little niche and join you guys.
Sick.
All right.
So we will be live during the entire first round of the draft. And then once the drafts are all concluded, I'm hoping that Sunday night we can sit down and kind of go over who they picked and give our thoughts. So that is what our draft coverage is going to look at. And I hope that if you enjoyed tonight, you will come and join us for that, because it's always, again,
We have a lot of fun stuff
it's a
planned.
4-hour show. It's stupid fun, and then we do a nice tight recap on the Sunday night. So I'm really looking forward to that. Any final thoughts, guys, before we get out of here?
I want a Beckett Seneke reaction again.
Nice.
Yeah, I would love that. That would make the draft a little bit more enjoyable. But yes, I'm looking forward to it. This is a fun 14 days or so.
Yeah, and then stay tuned, because we have right after the draft is free agency, and we'll be doing
Yes.
stuff for that also. So rest up, because it's gonna be a busy next
couple of it's gonna
next
be
couple of weeks for sure.
Next couple and then summer. Sad. All right, guys. In case you missed this or you want to watch it again, you can hit us up on all the social media platforms. If you are looking for this in an audio format, if you have someplace you get podcasts, I guarantee we're there. And if for some reason we're not, let us know. We will make sure we are there. If you are watching this after the fact and you have any comments on anything we said, hit us up in the comments on the YouTube channel below. If you are a Sharks fan and you like this kind of thing and somehow for some reason you are not subscribed, please subscribe, hit the like button. Obviously helps us out in the algorithm. Other than that, though, guys, we appreciate everyone being here. We look forward to seeing you all as the draft happens, and we will catch you on the next one. Thank you and good night.